So hello everybody, this is Sara Kolata of Architecture Talk Tank. I'm starting this whole new series of conversations right now with educators around the world, really discussing the concept of transforming architectural education into digital. With COVID-19, pretty much every single university around the world and educational body, as well as like private institutions, have had to adapt to teaching online. And most of us are just navigating blindly through it. I have been practicing digital transformation and digital strategy for specifically in architectural education for about 2 years now, helping architects and educators move online with their education. And I've always been talking about this in the most positive of ways, but not everybody finds this easy or perhaps beneficial or perhaps something that is, you know, the way to move forward with architectural education. So today I invited educators of architecture faculty from Tuskegee University to basically meet me and talk about how they have moved their faculty into digital education and perhaps answer some of the really bugging questions that I keep hearing within the community relating to how is it possible really, and how can we navigate through the problem of really moving architectural lab-based courses and kind of the hands-on experience of architectural education into virtual, because we all know that it's so important to keep architectural education kind of within the tag of the community to be able to allow for peer-to-peer learning as well as contact with mentors and learn from one another in the so-called open design studio, which is very broadly practiced in universities and in architectural education. And so right now we're all cut out from it and we're having to transition. So I wanted to have some stories perhaps shared from that transition so that we can all learn from it and look into opportunities of how can we actually connect those experiences that are right now missing from the analog into digital. So welcome, thank you so much for joining me. Perhaps each of you could introduce yourself really quickly.
I'm the department head of architecture at Tuskegee University, and I'm also an assistant professor I teach design studio, sustainability, historic preservation, computer applications, and pretty much any other course that is needed.
My name is Swarnali Ghosh Dasidar. I am actually a faculty at Tuskegee University in the Construction Science and Management Department. However, all my life I have worked in AEC firm, architecture, construction, and engineering firms. So I kind of migrate in both departments. So I am teaching a lot of construction courses as well, architecture, design studio, and material. And I'm Eastern faculty at Tuskegee.
My name is Ama Asamwa. I'm an assistant professor at Tuskegee University. My focus career-wise has been primarily in sustainable design, as well as architecture and urban development. So that's it.
Thank you. So yeah, like I mentioned before in the introduction, like architecture and studio design pretty much is very much based on processes and on collaboration between peer-to-peer as well as mentor to students. How are you finding now, you know, about a month and a half into teaching, maybe 2 months now, right, into teaching remotely? How did that transition really happen for your university as well as the students?
So our university actually, you know, within 1 week had to go online just like everybody else. And so I guess we really had 2 weeks because we extended our spring break. And then the university started to provide training. And in that process, we also had a chance to listen in on ACSA, the American Collegiate Schools of Architecture, had a webinar discussing the digital transformation. And this question of how do you make a design studio digital was what we deemed like a really hot button topic that we needed to figure out very fast. given that the three of us teach combination of two studios. So we immediately started trying to figure out what are some tools that we can explore. So one of them was a tool called Concept Board. Professor Sonali and I, and Professor Asamoah can speak a lot more on that one. Professor Sonali and I, we explored Facebook and Pinterest as a platform, and then all of us use Zoom as we're using now to connect with our students. So I'll let them speak about the experience of connecting with students remotely, and knowing that peer-to-peer learning was paramount to how we did this work, because we could not afford to lose that really great ball of energy that happens in the design studio. We all approached it from some different ways. So I'll let both of them speak about that.
So from my experience, I really don't think we have had significant loss in this peer-to-peer learning environment. And actually, me and Mr. Daniel are in the same studio. So when this happened, we had like in a couple of, actually many long discussion about how to make this happen. First of all, we needed projects that could be done at home without, without having them go somewhere or purchase something. At the same time, this has to meet the goal of the studio. So, and having a sustainable background, we came up with an upcycle project with, they are supposed to build something with found objects. Now, I have to admit here though, the reason this studio was successful because we had them physically in first semester. We taught them the basic skills, like how to really draft, what is actually the, what are the technical part of architecture. So we already have taught them that. So this semester, when we went digital, it was not like a foreign language that we were speaking. So they were able to understand the technicality of all the drawings and documentation and presentation, all of those. And all we had to do is actually we gave them freedom. I think that worked out really well. Now that we were not telling them to focus on one specific project. Instead, we asked them to pick one for themselves that is more appropriate for them. And I think it worked beautifully because they had the freedom to go choose the material. They had the freedom to go choose the purpose, the user, and everything. And we were looking for a platform where we could bring everything together. So we actually used Facebook. So we had our submission on Pinterest and Facebook. So everybody could still see each other's work, even though they are far apart. So students were posting videos, their weekly videos of their progress. And each student actually posted around 4 to 5 videos throughout this process since we had the lockdown started. So they could still see each other and learn from each other. They could comment on those videos. We could comment on those videos. The best part was now we are not restricted within those studio hours. Now we could actually come anytime and revisit and do comment and respond to their comments. If they had questions, they put it up. We could respond to that. So those are the advantages that we probably would not have if we had a physical studio. So it's different. I think with a little bit of brainstorming and using the tools we have, we could transform a physical studio into a digital one. And of course, we need to have willing students and willing participants who are actually risk takers, want to explore. So I think that's very important.
I agree wholeheartedly with what Professor Swanali said. For me, it was a little bit easier of a transition, I think, because we were coming towards the end of the semester and we were actually finishing up a semester-long project, which technically wasn't supposed to be a semester-long project. I just had to adapt. And that's a big part of all of this, is being flexible and adapting to this situation as quickly as possible. Primarily, I used Concept Board to interface with Zoom, and that was a very engaging tool in that I could have my students share screen and in real time mark up their drawings, and their classmates can give feedback. So there was still that collaborative environment, but it was online. So even if they were just using their cell phones, they could still see what was going on because they had already downloaded the app previously. And because I have a more advanced class, I teach the third year design studio, most of their things are done on the computer anyway. So I just, rework the requirements for the final project. We're not going to be able, unfortunately, to, I didn't want to risk my students going out to a store, getting materials. A lot of them are in the Atlanta area. COVID cases are really high there. Some of them are in other major metropolitan cities in the US. And I just didn't think it was necessary to, you go out to get materials and catch a virus. That was ridiculous to me. So for those students, I just required that they perform digitally as best as they could. Some students had difficulty accessing the internet, and the fact that they could use those platforms on the cell phone was extremely helpful, because at least they could participate in the conversation for our design studios online, and then later submit their work. So it was just, giving them some leeway and being very empathetic to their situation, and also allowing them to use as many digital platforms as possible. I got sick and tired of answering emails. At one point, I was like, okay, so we're gonna do a group me chat because all of you are asking the same questions. So we're gonna put these questions in the group me chat, and all of you can answer it for your entire class, like, to see. And that way I'm not answering so-and-so's email and this person's email and this person's email, because I was just spending a ridiculous amount of time on the computer. And that's kind of the drawback, is them having, they're almost in a little bit of a panic. So they're like, okay, professor, can we get this, or can we do this, or is this allowed? And it's, calm down, y'all. Let's not be frantic. Let's be organized about this. So that was very helpful, opening them up to different digital platforms and allowing them access to me in other ways was extremely beneficial.
It's really interesting for me that you say that, because normally I imagine that at university you actually kind of frowned upon when you use your phone and you get it out, you sit on social media and whatever, like, can you stop being on your phone? You're in class. And all of a sudden that phone became like the only way really to communicate, to submit work, etc. And, I really haven't expected you to say that you use Pinterest, for example. I mean, of course, it's like a platform that is just great for this, but it's maybe in the recent years become like less popular, and now it's found its new use, which is amazing, because with the new reinvention of how we use the phones and the technology and the social media as well, there comes more value, which is at least educational, and to stay in touch, not only based on laughing at silly videos and talking to friends about nothing. So how did you find that transition? And like, I'm sure it's also quite challenging for you to find the methods that work, like you mentioned with the email, for example, that some things that are just not like worthy of the time and effort, especially if you have, like, for example, something could replace it like a Telegram group or Facebook group that allow also for peer-to-peer kind of feedback. But I'm interested to see how this, I'm imagining the students have actually adapted to it quite easily.
Well, it actually, so it was really interesting because we had some students who were in rural areas and could not get access to internet. We had some students who did not have access to computers. And then we had some students who just didn't have access to software. And what's interesting, because we have our first year studio, which Professor Swinali and I teach, and we have the third year studio, which Professor Amma teaches, you're looking at two totally different levels of skill sets. So our first year students were truly all analog. Like it's all hand. We don't generally introduce digital tools until second semester, sophomore year. So they had no exposure to digital from us. And now we had to go all digital, but also try to find a bridge between that space and this space. And that's where that platform, like we realized while we were doing all analog hand drafting, well, our students didn't bring their boards home. They don't have T-squares. They don't have the, all the tools that are needed in order to do technical drafting. And that's one of the reasons that we had to switch to, all right, let's see how let's work on building something, do something that's useful and demonstrate your creative abilities. Whereas for the third year students, that transition was a little bit easier because they were already on that platform, although it was not easy in terms of making the transition because you had to figure out what tools to use. The digital world, they were already playing in that space. So what we got a chance to do is see, as our students progressed, we could throw some students on some other digital platforms like, oh, I want you to go play with SketchUp now, see what you can do in that space. And, try your hand at AutoCAD. Let's see what you can do with that, So it was this, it was a really beautiful moment that you got to see everything and say, everything is possible. There is no such thing as no. If it works for you, let's do it. We even had a student who, I think she used Microsoft Word to draw her work, and it worked. I mean, we wouldn't normally do it, but the sky was the limit. We just had, we just have to figure out what's going to work. And having students who were flexible, having great faculty who remained flexible and open and very loose, right? In this period where there's all this stress on you, they were able to remain loose, which helped the students remain loose, which helped them, I think, reap great benefits out of both studios.
Yeah, one of the major challenges I came across is not necessarily in my design studio, but in my design presentation course, was access to software and technology, because many of the students utilize the labs that we have on campus to get their work finished. And I remember calling Mr. Daniels kind of in a panic because we had set up these extensive VPN networks so that the students could have access to Adobe Creative Suite and all these different softwares, and it wasn't working. And I'm like, all right, so what do I do now? Like, what am I going to show them? I can't assess whether or not they understand this software. And then it became, okay, you have to change your focus about what goals you want to achieve with this. Do they understand the techniques of presentation and layout? Do they understand proper workflow in developing? We might not get a finished rendering from them this semester, but do they understand the process of developing that? So it became optional. It's like, okay, if you have the software to complete this step by step, have at it. If you do not, go create a document or presentation that lets me understand that you understand the process of how to do it. So then when you do have access to the software, you can go back and refer to this presentation that you've actually laid out and developed. And I think that was very successful.
I think going through this process, two things that became very strong topics to discuss. One is like when actually we should introduce digital media into curriculum. Because as Mr. Daniel said, we were dealing with first year students, and almost like for first 3 semesters, architecture students are not introduced to any kind of digital media because we are focusing more on giving them the first basic skills of understanding the language of architecture. However, this situation kind of pushed us to think about when actually it should be introduced. And actually me and Mr. Daniel are talking about for coming semester to create a hybrid kind of studio where we are not physically present and they are required to do things digitally, so that the fear of having a completely different media to present your work is actually negotiated. And also another thing we have to kind of come up with the given that some students, we are in different time zones and we had issues with softwares, networking, and computer, that our material that we deliver has to be delivered or has to be accessible via cell phone. So we are targeting all our teaching material, presentation material to adaptable to a cell phone. So I think those two discovery is really vital, and we are still kind of struggling through it to make the right decisions for everyone. But I think this is very important to introduce the digital media way earlier now, and have them have a laptop, like a little something like laptop, because so many of our students are actually dependent on the lab that we have on campus. So when that was closed, we had a big challenge to solve.
Yeah, indeed. And, it's very interesting because I think that with the kind of times we live in, a lot of students, even at a very early age, actually, before they go to university, they already have access to these kind of hardware, like a phone, a computer. But it's not for everyone. And indeed, like when there's a talk of unifying the education and unifying the system of implementing this education, you need to have those things in place and think about them. And it's very interesting how you speak about the transition and the different new decisions being made, like for example creating the hybrid studio. I wonder how did the older faculty, teaching faculty, adapt to this? Did you have any interesting stories? Or because surely people that are already using with the phone in their hands, living with their phones in their hands is easier, but not for everyone.
So I've been teaching online classes for about 4 years now. So as an administrator and kind of in this new digital environment, I felt it important to help faculty, so all faculty, be able to make a smooth transition, and to see that there's some hurdles I've already overcome with this space. Although going virtual is not the same as going online. Like they're two different experiences. But we have a lot of faculty. We have like 2 individuals in our program that between them, they probably have close to 100 years of teaching experience, if not. So that means they're very seasoned in the traditional methods of education and architecture. The problem is that now they have to figure out how to transition that knowledge digitally. And it was one of the most humbling experiences to be able to help a faculty member that one of them is actually, taught 2 of us. To be able to teach this faculty member how to go online. And this is I think a really serious topic. How do we hold the hands of our elders as they demonstrate their continued usefulness, right? You have more years of, you were teaching before I was born. So I'm nowhere near where you are, but I have the ability to show you what the space is, and you have to be very patient. And it was like, a lot of times you kind of like, if I could really just like jump through the screen and your hand, it's actually right there. But now you got to change your language, right? I can't use, just click on the icon. That does it. What is an icon? Like which one of these icons? Like, the thing all the way in the corner on the left, no, the other left. Like you have to start finding ways to be very, very, have really great bedside manner with them, be very, very reassuring with them, and be humble enough to learn from them. So one of the faculty members, as he's like negotiating all of this space, he said to me, it's just iterations. And that was like, wow, here you are, your whole world is shifted, and you've summed this whole thing up in the way to embrace change as it's just iterations. You're right, it is just iterations. So we just do it a bunch of times, and we'll do it, we'll get it right. And it taught me that as we deal with change, as we deal with anything, if you keep it that simple, then all of the panic that is associated with trying to learn new things can be dissipated.
It was a wonderful exchange. Like, I would have never thought that I had something to teach my former professor. And knowing how particular and meticulous he is was very it was life-changing, because he makes you pay attention to the details. But also he was very receptive and very excited about learning still. So it wasn't like, I know everything, I got this, you can't show me what to do type thing, that type of pompous situation. It was very much like, okay, well, you show me this, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in the fall, so you're an expert now, Amma, so now you can go back and teach me everything when we get back in the fall. Like, okay. So it's been humbling, it's been encouraging, because even when I was frustrated and tired and depressed and not really feel like, I don't want to get up and get on Zoom, I'd get a call or a text from him like, listen, Amma, I need this in this particular format. I want this particular language and in this format, like I want it done just so. And it helps you get back on your game. So working with the older faculty and being able to be a student to them still, and also teach them and engage with them has been extremely rewarding.
Thank you so much for sharing this. It's really interesting, because indeed I think that a lot of people might be facing this, and I see my mom also how she transitioned. Like she's around 63, and first, like I think the changes were when she got her iPod first, and started her Facebook profile. And now she's even more advanced than me because I don't spend that much time on social media, but she consumes her knowledge from there, and she watches all the YouTube things and reads articles online and everything, and all her communication is just based on that. And it's really, it's fascinating to see that change as well, and how people are dealing with this. Especially in education, because at the end of the day, all those things are just tools. So we're just shifting what we've been doing in the analog into digital. And of course, there's a price to pay, but there are also possibilities. So I just wanted to ask you about this, actually. What were the positives that came from that change? Things that perhaps didn't happen so often or never before, and now they had because of the digital transformation?
Oh, I was just about to say something. Like, one great thing we noticed here, because we had access to this unlimited world of internet, whenever we were talking about an example, we could immediately pull it up and show it to everybody. That was something that is just, well, I think would take a lot of effort to do in physical class, face-to-face classroom setting. Here, we any example or anything that we pull up, even the students, even they want to share something, they just immediately pull up. And now here we are sitting like 22 of us could see it immediately. And although we are sitting in like, different parts of the country and different time zones. So that was extremely beautiful. And the timelessness of presentation. It doesn't matter, it's ours, the one that we did on Zoom and recorded, or if theirs. We can always go back and revisit. And every time I go and I see my own record, find something stupid that I did while class, and I remind myself not to repeat it again and again. So that thing is absolutely not possible. Like, I don't think, I know some universities may, but in general cases, we do not record our live lectures. That was like, I think the two biggest advantage of, having the ability to go back and revisit what has happened. And it's a huge record collection, data collection that I think is extremely beneficial to the whole process.
I can jump in. I think one of the most significant ones to me is the ability to invite guests in. I mean, we did one of the projects that our students were working on. This was a lecture class where the students were learning AutoCAD, but were drafting a historic structure and plans to submit it to the Historic American Building Survey for their drafting and drawing competition. Well, the students, we were able to invite someone from that HAB's office and another preservationist, and one is in Washington, D.C., the other one's in New York City. They're both 14 to 16 hours drive away, right? So they're not just hopping, they're not going around the corner. And our university is so remote that that's been our biggest challenge. How do we connect our students with the world? So this created an opportunity to not only connect with the world by bringing experts in, it also allowed us to connect with the world by sharing our content with the general public. So while we received the feedback from them, I also simultaneously had another class that I opened up to the public, was like, hey, we're going live at this time and feel free to join in. If you have feedback or questions, I'll be glad to answer them. And we've never been able to do that so broadly and so quickly and easily, that these are now elements of that have to stay. Like, they can't go away, because it's made that classroom experience way more exciting than what we were able to do before. I
wholeheartedly agree. I was just able to broadcast my final jury on YouTube live, and my students were like, we didn't know we were going to be on live. And like, if I told you, you probably wouldn't. So that was amazing, because I was able to connect them with academics and experts that I forgot that I had contact with. Like, one of a friend of mine who I went to school with over a decade ago tuned in from UPenn. And he was like, I loved your students' work and everything. Former professors were reaching out to me, other researchers and professionals who I presented the same research to. They're like, this is an extension of research that I had already started. So they were, excited to see the growth. They could comment, and then the students could, go back and read the comments later. I had students' parents online, like, cheering them on. So that exposure and community engagement, and I was like crying the whole time, because I was like, I'm so proud of you guys. You did an excellent job. And all of their families and things are online. Professionals are online. And then what I found out, I'm what are we? I'm thinking of Generation X. My children, my students rather, are Gen Z. So no, I'm millennial. That's what it is. My students are Gen Z. You see, I keep calling them my children. So they're all into Twitter and everything. I'm, traditionally a Facebooker and Instagrammer. And they're like, Professor Asamoah, we put our work up on Twitter and I've never gotten so many hits. Like everybody's so excited about what we're doing. And I'm just like, you know, never even thought about it. So we're working on a project that's based in Ghana. And so now I can have my Ghanaian family actually see said content, professionals and academics from the continent come on board and give comments and give feedback. And I think that has been the most valuable thing. It's given my students the confidence to actually, you know, publicly display their work for everyone to see and reach out to professionals that they typically wouldn't reach out to. So one student in particular, I introduced him to an architect by the name of Francis Kere. And he's like been really like engaged in precedents that have to do with Francis Kere, and he's been looking up his work. And he's like, you know, Ms. Osborne, I'm not sure if this is going to work. You know, he's like, I said, listen, go online, go on Instagram, and hit him in his DMs. Like, send him a message and see what he thinks. Ask him for some feedback. He's like, really, you think I can do that? I'm like, of course you can. And so they're reaching out. They're becoming more confident. They're displaying their work in ways that they probably never would have considered before this whole situation. So that's been very rewarding.
Yeah, that's absolutely great. I mean, it's you're just giving me examples of things I wouldn't even think that could be already manifesting because of this. But I love this. It's really great. And actually, I was thinking to invite Francis Kere to one of these talks as well. The reason behind it is because I am basically literally the reason why I'm doing it is because like my whole heart is in preservation of architectural vernacular technology. And before I was working as an architect building to preserve, but the impact of it was so small. And yet I was meeting like so many educators as I traveled, as well as elders in communities across the world that actually still know how to build with natural materials, and they know how to utilize nature to live out of, which for me is so crucial to like help be able to like stay independent as humanity, because of the fact that we can utilize nature to live off. And I think situations like that with COVID, like really put it on the spot that the more dependent we are from having to buy our food in the store and our building materials in the store, and we don't know how to utilize, you know, growing and building out of nature, then the more dependent we are and almost disabled to live without that whenever we get cut out from it. And so for me, like preserving the knowledge of building and living out of nature is really important. And it kind of moved into digital strategy because I knew so many architects that worked with bamboo, earth, and natural materials. And I just thought, oh my God, like if I even get to build a project or have a project or even like a tiny collaboration with each of them, I won't have enough of a lifetime. But if I like teach them and help them to record their knowledge and put it digitally, then we will preserve it because it's going to be out there forever, right? It's like, it's just going to be there. It's like a massive library. It can be instructional, like how to build, and it can really have an incredible effect on preservation. And I know that Francis Kere is all about it, so I thought it would be great to like have his viewpoint on like digital transformation and what, you know, benefits could that actually carry for things like preservation of indigenous knowledge. So it's interesting. And yeah, well, I just last question I wanted to ask you is what do you think you're gonna keep from this whole experience if we do come back to normal and we go back to university and we go back to analog teaching? Because you know, it sounds like you all discovered tiny little things that were just revolutionary and could really improve the way you teach and also communicate with students, perhaps also like manage reviews. So is there anything that you will want to keep for the future?
Honestly, I'd like to keep a lot of it. The ability to connect, for Professor Swinali and I, the fact that we got a chance to teach a design studio to first-year students where they weren't in a studio, but they were working at home with their parents, and you're always telling students how you got to be in the studio, got to be in the studio, got to be in studio. And we've associated work with that place. And we've made assumptions that because you're in that place, you're going to be the most productive. Whereas we found, first of all, students aren't in a studio, but the studio has a purpose, but it's not necessarily 24/7. It just might be between the hours of 10 and 12, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, when they need to go there to build something. So the ability to capture lectures and be able to share it with students in real time, thoughts that, I mean, we all know you could be in the middle of something, you get this inspiration and you want to capture it. And you're like, I can't, because if I stop, I'm gonna lose it, Well, you captured it already, and you can always refer back to it. Feedback that you give to students. I mean, things that I've wanted to do where a student has a project and this was like an individual meeting with that student that you're like, man, it would have been so useful for other students to engage. I can now be like, you know what, go on Zoom and we're gonna record this, because after I respond to you, I'm gonna send it out to everybody else and they can get that answer and I don't have to repeat that. So there has been so much from this experience that I think I'd say keep it all, just refine it so that it's a lot smoother, a lot more reliable, and a lot more aligned with the expectations.
I think for me, it's really reconsidered my approach to how I teach studio in terms of engagement with the students, and like just that option of having a desk crit and everybody's able to watch and give feedback and draw on your drawings and give you suggestions. It's become even more collaborative, because we might have pinups maybe once a week. And a lot of times it's like, all right, let's get through this because we don't have a lot of time. It's 15 students whose projects we've got to go through, when I can now break those students up, 5 this day, 5 that day, 5 that day, and give them specific details, and their classmates can go in and give them suggestions and precedents and everything. I think it's been way more effective as a collaborative environment. And then also, like in the realm of exploration, I think giving them the physical space to actually go and explore, and maybe that's what the physical design studio is. It's literally a lab, and so you're going and playing with different materials and seeing what we can build, because the physicality has kind of been sacrificed for my students anyway. So to be able to give them a place to go and physically build, but you don't have to be in there all the time to be productive, like Mr. Daniel said, and you don't have to be there to get feedback either. I definitely keep a lot of it, especially that collaboration with professionals and academics and experts from all over the world, that they plug in and go back, and having that digital data and that online recording where people could go back and comment later. I don't got to look at this today. Like the dean of our school wasn't able to be at the jury, but he can go back and skim through the video and say, oh, well, this student can work on this more, and I'm glad to see this student working on, et cetera. And for that, for our archival records and data collection and responding to the students and helping them with their growth, yeah, I definitely keep all of those things going forward.
I actually do not want to go back to that analog stage at all. I do want to keep this going and keep this going strong. So even before COVID happened, truly, even before COVID happened, I was doing a lot of teaching through digital media, whatever possible. Of course, I had to go to class to give the lectures, but all my materials were available through Blackboard. I did my test, my quizzes, my evaluation, my grading, everything through Blackboard. I was probably one of the ones that is using technology most. And I do come from that technology background, because I was actually working as a BDC manager before I actually joined Tuskegee. So I do love technology. So just so you know about that. So I do not really want to go back to the traditional way of 100%. Let's say it this way, that going back 100% teaching analog. I think a way hybrid method is going to prove more beneficial because of the advantage that we have experienced. And having gone through this, I realized one thing, that it's not always necessary that we have to direct our students to do something. If we give them freedom, they can come up with projects that we could have never thought of, and that this is a test studio is a testimony of that. Like, these students are really, like 8 months back, they were in high school, or 9 months back, they were in high school. But the projects that came up with was very professional. And the skill set that we learned, the things that we learned about them, their strengths, their weakness, that probably we could have never learned in a situation where we are giving them a project and asking them to work. This diversification of project and the freedom that we gave them actually worked beautifully, because now they were able to show their talent. I think that was beautiful, and I want to keep a lot of it. And I'm actually glad to have a partner like Mr. Daniel, who is extremely adventurous, extremely risk taker. So I think we are going to do something, some changes. However, as I mentioned earlier, we do have to find out the media to deliver with. Like, for our students, we are targeting cell phone, and we have to also find the digital tools, like what software that we can give them. Like, SketchUp is a software that easy to learn and is available to the students. At the same time, I could talk about Autodesk softwares, but we cannot introduce that to the first year students, because that's kind of would be too much. I think that would be challenging for them. We never know. Truly, we never know. We only would know if we really introduce that to them. So, that's kind of, we actually started to have that kind of dialogue and see how much we can push the envelope, truly. And I do like to do that.
Excellent. And, I think that indeed it just proves that there is a lot of benefits that come from it. And I think, I don't know, maybe I'll let you answer. Do you think that it's going to be possible to also maintain the human scale of things and not lose the analog experience where it's needed?
Well, yes, I was just about to say, so I do miss the human interaction, like the physical interaction, like just giving a hug, handshake, which although I'm not going to do anymore, but that is something I really don't know how to kind of introduce digitally. Like, you can give a digital hug. We have been taught by Facebook to give emotions, happy, support, thumbs up, thumbs down, and all that kind of stuff. But yes, I think that would be a loss if we, for an example, go 100% digital. Yes, that would be a loss of not being able to be in a physical space with a lot of with your peers, with your colleagues. So that's why I think I would prefer the kind of the hybrid kind of situation, which I know has challenges. Like, we cannot say a student to come a partial semester to be on campus and not to be on campus physically, for rest of the semester. But I think, we do have some challenges as everything else, I won't say challenge, opportunities to deal with going forward. And, as time goes, I think we are going to figure it out little by little.
Yeah, I think it's definitely important to cultivate a space where students can come and focus on architecture. A lot of them went back home and had to deal with all right, we're taking on jobs now. We have to take on responsibility around the house. We have to participate in things that our parents, you know, had to do. And it was like, many a times I got a student who's out and about retrieving something for their parents or doing something for their families. And there's a lot of distractions outside of the college campus. And because we are in a rural environment and our students choose to come and attend school here because of that, they can kind of have this, I don't want to say a retreat, but just a safe space where they can cultivate their talents. I think it's important for us to provide that physical arena for them to do that and to grow, because to throw them out in the midst of all of that kind of chaos becomes a bit of an additional distraction and a stressor for them, because a lot of times we only consider like, okay, they just have our class. No, they've got other coursework that they're taking and they're trying to focus on. And you know, I got students with 4.0s like freaking out, like, okay, I don't know if I'm going to be able to maintain this level of productivity and consistency that I would usually do with my academics, because I had to go get a job. I have to take care of an elderly parent or a relative or little brothers and sisters. So all of those things said that the hybrid would definitely, I think, be successful, but we have to definitely maintain a physical space for them.
Yeah, I think it creates an experience for students that I want to know this person. I want to meet this person. I want to touch this person. You know, I mean, if we think that, like, we've been doing this virtual thing for a long time. We did it with television. We see stars on TV and we think we know them. You know, we grew up with them. Like, we cried with you. We went to bed when you went to bed. We don't know these people. They don't know who we are. You know, we feel bad when we hear they're dead. You're like, oh, I'll just watch a rerun and I'll know them again. Like, we've been in this space already. It's just now it's starting to meet other areas of life. What this means is that we can have the ability to create really robust learning experiences and can reach students that may have always wanted to go there. Like, for our campus, we're a National Historic Landmark. We're an active campus and we're an active historic site. And so there's all these reasons that students will want to come to our campus, yet many students can't venture. But now we have a way that we can connect to a student. So it's this, you know, as they've all said, this hybrid model is a great model. That student who actually can afford to come on campus, it's now a premium for you to spend time here for 4 years or for 5 years. For that student who can't do that, you now can touch the campus in a way that you could not touch it before. And we all have skills and knowledge and experiences that will make you want to come, because you're like, wow, they're having such a great experience. But I think it's going to present some real challenges, because the culture, particularly our school, we're a historically Black university, and there's a strong culture associated with that I am concerned that some of that may get lost, or better yet, I'm excited for how we're going to make the transition, because I think we're going to value it, but we just don't know what is it going to look like tomorrow, right? You know, I've done some Zoom meetings with with different groups that are affiliated with our university or affiliated with other groups. That has been an exciting engagement. It's not, that Zoom meeting where like 100 people get on and you share moments with each other. It's definitely not the touching and the physical that we're used to, but it is something close to it. And it really does make that opportunity to be back in each other's presence so much more valuable than what it used to be before.
Yeah. And I just wanted to add one point. If we are talking about meeting like screen to screen, but worse come worse, or I won't say worse come worse, but if situation demand for it, we always have the technology as mixed reality holograms and all that to kind of, to have that feeling, the close to physical feeling. We do have the technology. Technology do exist that will actually virtually transport people from one physical space to another. We have not just explored it yet because of its cost and usability and all that, but going through this experience, I think those technologies are going to take a bigger shape in our academic career and curriculum, and we can always introduce mixed reality into our space and digitally meet.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure that, you know, we can always keep that aspect, especially when the vaccine gets, you know, I mean, this isn't going to be forever. And it's really important to remain human. It's important for our psyche as well to just be healthy, right? To stay in contact and physical contact and share spaces together and build community. But I also think that on the other hand, like a lot of us have gained perhaps some more like the slowdown of the intensity of life, like we experience this in normal career-driven reality. It has been beneficial for many people just to take a little bit of a breath and perhaps reconnect with family or have some more time to focus on health, maybe also connect to nature, like go for walks. I know that people in big cities are really occupying parks. And in some places they had to close them because people started actually to spend more time in nature. And in a way, I think that there are those benefits that perhaps when we do go back, we're going to want to keep more of. And so that's also another aspect that can add on to the healthier mind, healthier body, better education, and better, truly like more clarity as to like also career-driven decisions, etc. So, you know, as much as probably not everybody's feeling the positive, I think that there's a lot of positives in all of it too.
Definitely.
But I have to say this though, I'm not sure when you say connecting with family, I feel like I'm busier now than before.
It's true.
Work and home, and now there is no boundary.
There's no separation.
Yes.
It's work at home, meaning working all the time around family.
Yeah.
Yes.
And more emails, as Professor Asoma said, it's like they're asking repeated questions, and now we have more emails explaining the same thing. And now we have this answer as like recording our, our responses and just, publishing it in place, and then you reach everybody. So yeah, I would say it's a different way of working. I won't say better or worse or anything. It's a different way of working, and every other situation, it has its own trade-off, and we just have to maneuver with it and use the ones that works on our advantage.
All that to say, I'm just grateful to still be working. This could definitely be a situation where I could not earn an income and support myself and my family because I'm in a completely different field that does not allow me access to a digital space. So that I'm extremely grateful for. I might complain about sending a million emails, but hey, listen, at the end of the day, I can still eat, which is a very scary reality some people are facing at this point, that they're not sure where their next meal is going to come from because they cannot earn a living at this point.
Thank you so much for showing up for this. It was a lovely conversation. I think we covered a lot, and yeah, I'm gonna publish it soon. We coordinate also the tagging of everything and sharing the links. I'll let you know on LinkedIn. But yes, thank you so much, and thank you also to the listeners. And let's tune in to more of this conversation. I hope that there will be definitely more coming in the comments, perhaps not in the closest weeks, but surely soon.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was lovely to meet you all.
All right. Have a great day. Look forward to hearing from you soon.
Too.
Okay.
Thank you. You too.